is prepared to testify in his capacity as a 30B6 witness on behalf of Northwest Trustee today. I will ask you though, if you're going to ask him questions in his as to his individual capacity, just please make very clear when you're asking your question what capacity you're asking him to.
Could you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Good morning, Mr. Stenman. How are you?
Good.
Okay. I am going to be asking you questions concerning the lawsuit that we filed against your company as well as some other defendants, which is Lucero versus Bayview. And I have discussed with your counsel, I am going to be asking questions pertaining to your capacity as a 30B representative of the company. Now, that would be the premise. If I ask you anything else that is looking for information other than that capacity, I will specify for you. Is that agreeable?
Yes.
Okay. Please spell your name and state your address for the record.
Jeff, J-E-F-F, Stenman, S-T-E-N-M-A-N, 13555 36th Southeast 36th Street, Bellevue, Washington, 98009. 98006. Yeah.
Did you review and what did you do? I'm sorry, strike that. What did you do to prepare for this deposition?
I reviewed the file.
The Lucero file?
The foreclosure file.
Okay. What else did you do?
I reviewed the foreclosure file. That's all I reviewed.
And when you refer to the file, are you talking about electronic file?
Yes.
Okay. Did you write anything down while you were reviewing the file?
No.
Did anyone provide you with their notes to prepare for this deposition today?
No.
Did you meet with anybody in your preparation for the deposition today?
Yes.
And who did you meet with?
Object to the
I'm
extent.
not asking for the contents, just who you met with.
Counsel.
And how many times did you meet with your counsel?
Once.
Okay. I want you to describe your employment history in the foreclosure business, but going from recent day back. Can you do that? So starting with Northwest Trustee.
I joined Northwest Trustee July 15th of 1996. Before Northwest Trustee, I was with Chase. They called it Chase Manhattan Mortgage at the time in Columbus, Ohio. I joined Chase in, I believe it was March of 94, I want to say, might have been 95. And then prior to that, Fleet Mortgage Corporation, and that was my first job, out of college anyways.
So since 1996, you've been employed by Northwest Trustee.
Yes.
And has your employment been primarily with foreclosures?
Yes.
Could you describe your current functions and titles with Northwest Trustee?
I'm the Vice President and Secretary. My operational title is Director of Operations.
What exactly do you do as Director of Operations?
I manage 2 sites. The site we have in Santa Ana, California, and the site that we have here in Bellevue, Washington. I have 2 operations managers that report to me, 1 in each site. And they oversee the entire foreclosure operation.
So, in terms of your capacity as manager, or I'm sorry, as superior of those 2, are you hands-on at all on any of the files, or are you simply supervising?
Certain escalated issues come to my attention.
And explain that for me in terms of escalated situations.
So if there's a, say there's a sale day issue, those would come to me if we have a request, last minute request by a borrower or borrower's agent to postpone the sale. I would review and make the decision on whether that sale would proceed or whether we postpone. All of the legislative changes, I'm responsible to get those implemented on the advice of counsel, and procedural changes that our clients, the servicers, sent to us. I'd be in charge of making sure that those were implemented.
Who is your immediate superior?
Jeff Aiken,
And what is his title?
I believe he's the CFO of RIM, Real Estate in Motion.
Real Estate in Motion?
Yes.
And how is that company related to Northwest Trustee?
They provide management services to the trustee company.
What does Real Estate in Motion do besides that function that you just described?
I think they provide management services to other companies.
Does that mean that Real Estate in Motion is partly owned by Northwest Trustee or vice versa?
I don't believe so.
Are you familiar with the relationship between Northwest Trustee and RCO?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Can you tell me what you know?
They act as our outside counsel occasionally.
Outside counsel occasionally, meaning you don't use them all the time?
No.
Okay, and when you say outside counsel, what does that entail?
Object to the extent that you're asking for any attorney-client privileged information.
General services.
We have a very small inside counsel. If there's a litigation that requires time and effort that we cannot attend to it, then we'll hire outside counsel, and RCO will be one of those to handle litigation.
Has it in fact that RCO been the primarily outside counsel for your company?
Object to the form.
If you can.
Most litigation, if it was being handled by outside counsel, it would be RCO.
And you mentioned that you have an inside lawyer now, correct? An in-house counsel, so to speak?
Yes.
And who is that?
Actually, there's two, Bob Norum in our Santa Ana office and Chuck Katz also in our Santa Ana office.
Did they both work for RCO prior to becoming general counsel for your company?
Chuck Katz was an employee of RCO at one time.
And when did he become one of your in-house counsel?
I don't know the date.
Is it within the last year?
Yes, I think so.
In terms of your testimony of the relationship between Northwest and RCO, are you aware of the ownership interest held by either or both companies?
Object to the form.
I know of the owners of RCO. I'm not sure all of the owners of RCO, and I know of the owners of Northwest Trustee.
Can you name them for me?
I believe they're shareholders, not owners. They're David Fennell and Stefan Ralph for the trustee company.
And do these men also shareholders of RCO?
I don't know.
As opposed to your position as Director of Operations, what does your position as VP entail, Vice President of Northwest Trustee?
I thought I already answered that in the previous question.
Well, I guess what I heard from you is that there's a functional title to your job, which is Director of Operations, correct?
Correct.
You also said that you're a Vice President.
Yes.
Okay, so are these duties of the Vice President and Director of Operations overlap? Are they distinct? I'm asking you to clarify.
The corporate designation allows me to execute certain documents for the company, licensing documents, for example, things like that. execute on documents like trustees' deeds. They're kind of the same job, really, in my view.
Under either of these positions, are you then a shareholder of Northwest Trustee?
No,
So you do not receive compensation for acting as vice president, separate from your director of operations position?
Object to the floor.
I don't know, there are two titles. I assume that I was getting compensation for my job. I don't know that there's a difference there.
Are you aware of a relationship between Real Estate in Motion and RCO?
Yes,
And what is that relationship?
I believe they provide management services to the law firm.
So Real Estate in Motion, RIM, provides management services to both RCO and Northwest Trustee.
I believe so, yes.
And when you refer to management services, can you explain what that means?
Are you asking me about RCO or Northwest Trustee?
Well, let's start out with Northwest Trustee.
They would manage things like mail services. They would provide the building. They would provide services that support the building. I don't know what else they might support.
Do you know who owns RIM?
No.
Are you familiar with USAForeclosure.com?
Yes.
Okay, and what is that company?
It's a third-party website.
Do you know who owns it?
I've never looked it up to see who owns it, no.
What does it do you know?
It provides to the trustee company, it publishes our sales. So the sale dates, the location, the time, the opening bid, the status.
To the best of your knowledge, do they receive compensation for doing that?
I don't know if they do.
Are you knowledgeable of how a property is referred to USAForeclosure.com to be posted in the manner that you just described?
Object to the floor.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Okay, so logically speaking, how does a property that Northwest Trustee handles in terms of foreclosure get onto the USAForeclosure.com website?
I think it's an XML feed from our main case management system to the website.
So it is actually Northwest Trustee that feeds the data?
Yes.
And are you knowledgeable of what kind of data and what kind of information being fed?
Yes.
What are they?
Like I said before, the sale date, the time, the location, the status of the sale, and the opening bid.
When or who decides to send the data over to the website?
It's triggered by when we put the foreclosure sale date in the system.
We as a Northwest Trustee?
Yes.
Do you have an individual in your company that does that?
No, it's automatic. It's through automation.
And so explain that for me in terms of when Northwest Trustee receives a referral for foreclosure, is that the same time that the information hits the website or get fed into the website?
No. It doesn't go to the website until there's an actual sale date scheduled.
I see. I don't remember. Did I ask you whether you know who owns USAForeclosure.com?
I don't know if you did, but the answer is I don't know who owns it. I've never looked it up.
Are you familiar with a company called FEI?
Yes.
What does that stand for? Do you know?
I think it's Foreclosure Expediters / Initiators.
What does this company do?
They provide posting, service of process. They they provide sales agents for the calling of foreclosure sales and postponements.
And do you know if they provide these services only to Northwest Trustee or other companies?
I don't know.
Do you know who owns FEI?
I know who the corporate officers are, but I don't know who owns them.
Who are the corporate officers that you know?
Well, I know they're listed as managers. Stephen Ross is manager and David Fennell's a manager.
What was the second name?
David Fennell, Fennell.
To the best of your knowledge, does strike that. Do you know if there is an affiliated title company within this group of companies that you've just described?
Yes.
What's the name of that company?
Next Title
What does Next Title do?
provides title services, escrow services.
And is that in general or only relating to the foreclosure cases that Northwest handles?
In general.
Do you know who owns Next Title?
No, I've never looked it up.
What functions or services does Next Title provide to Northwest in relations to your foreclosures?
Trustee sale guarantees.
And what is that?
It's a title report. It would show all the characteristics of the property, who has liens against it, the lien that we're foreclosing, judgments, IRS liens.
To the best of your knowledge, when you testified about their services to others, general escrow and title services, do you know if they provide closing or escrow services to the properties that were foreclosed by Northwest?
At one time they did, they may have. I don't know if they still do.
I want to go back to your testimony in terms of real estate in motion, or RIM, being responsible for providing the building to Northwest. Is that correct? The physical location.
My understanding that they handle the lease, yes.
And your understanding is that the building is leased rather than owned?
I don't, for Northwest Trustees purposes, it's leased to Northwest Trustee.
And is it
We pay rent.
is it true that RCO is housed in the same building as you are?
They're in a different suite, but yes, in the same building.
Okay. Can you describe the physical configurations as to where RCO is in relation to your company?
So we're on the first floor of that building. They're on suites on the second and third floor.
So they occupy 2 floors and you occupy 1?
We occupy 1 suite on the first floor. They occupy several suites on the second and third floor.
Does the building contain other businesses?
Yes.
What are these businesses?
I don't know, unrelated to our business.
I would like to go to the process by which Northwest forecloses on properties. Can you walk us through logically, or should I say chronologically, from the point of getting the referral to the trustee sale?
Object to the front.
A referral is received by the trustee electronically, usually. It's entered into our case management system electronically, usually. We order a trustee sale guarantee. In return for the trustee sale guarantee, we get a beneficiary's check, which is the title returns a copy of the deed of trust, the original vesting deed, any post deed of trust vesting deed, any assignment of record, so that we can see who the current grantor in the deed of trust is and if they've transferred their interest. We then request, if it's not provided with the referral, a lossment declaration.
What declaration?
A lossment declaration to ensure compliance with the Foreclosure Fairness Act. We request an appointment of successor trustee. If there's if the foreclosed in the name of isn't currently showing on the title as the current beneficiary, we will request an assignment. and will request a beneficiary's declaration. When all 4 of those are in our possession, the lost mint deck, the assignment, the appointment, and the beneficiary's declaration, we'll review them to make sure that they all agree with each other, and then we'll issue the notice of default as the trustee. Then there's a 30-day period from the notice of default before it expires. Once it expires, we issue a notice of trustee sale. The notice of trustee sale is posted, recorded, and mailed. There's a notice of foreclosure that also goes to the borrower. Once we reach about 30 days prior to the sale date, we initiate publication of the notice of trustee sale. Within that 30 days, we also do a title check to see if there's any new liens, specifically an IRS lien. If there's an IRS lien, we give 25 days minimum notice. When we're about 10 days from the sale, we request a bid from the beneficiary. That's entered into our system when it's received. There's some checks that we make during the process for bankruptcy and to check for active military status. And then we go to sale. The sale is conducted usually at a courthouse or some public place. And the property is auctioned to the highest bidder for cash, unless it's the beneficiary and there's no other bidders. That's a credit bid. And then a trustee's deed is issued within approximately 15 days.
Thank you. In your testimony that you, during this process, request a bid from the beneficiary, this sets the price that the beneficiary would purchase the property back if there was no bidder. Is that?
If there's no bidders at sale, then it would go back to the beneficiary for the credit bid.
All right. So in this process, it is not that the beneficiary actually shows up at the sales. You're simply crediting or applying the bid when there's no other parties or people bidding on the property. Do you understand my question?
Yes, the agent announces for the beneficiary the opening credit bid.
And then if there's no bidders, then?
It would revert to the beneficiary.
Okay. So when you refer to the agent, who is the agent of?
Agent of the trustee.
And is that the same as Northwest, or do you have another company that acts as agent for the trustee?
Several.
Are we talking about individuals?
I'm sorry, it's not Northwest, it's usually an agent of Northwest.
Okay. And are we referring to companies, corporations, or individuals?
The agents usually work for a company. FEI coordinates most of our sales, so they provide the agent. Auction.com is another agent that we utilize to conduct our sales.
Do you know who owns Auction.com?
No,
Do you know whether they're related to FBI?
they're not.
In your description of this whole process, is it safe to assume that the process is primarily automated? Meaning you receive information through a computer platform or system software, and you send them out, these requests that you mentioned, also via a platform or computer system or software? A
lot of the information that we obtain is through some sort of automation or some sort of feed, but there isn't any notice. A lot of the information that goes into our case management system is entered manually. That information is fed into the notices. Those notices are produced manually, then imaged, they're reviewed. Nothing is really just, it isn't a situation where the referral comes in, I push a button, and then it's not managed from there. People have to review it at every stage. Every document that's produced is a mail merge document. It's merged by a human being. So I would say the data part of it, a lot of that's transmitted through automation.
Okay. So let's begin with that. I want to talk about the referral of a particular foreclosure to your company. And in past depositions, I've seen documents where the referral actually is addressed to RCO. Have you seen that?
Yes.
And can you tell me, if it's addressed to RCO, how does Northwest get it?
When we have a direct data integration with the referral system,
And
the
what is that
third-party
called?
referral system.
I'm sorry, what is that called?
LPS is the referral system that most servicers use, or LPS desktop. It's an electronic referral, and it's initiated through an electronic process. If it's a non-judicial foreclosure referral, it goes right to Northwest Trustee. If it was a judicial foreclosure referral, it would go right to Ralph Crabtree Olson.
To Ralph.
Crabtree Olson,
Which is the same as RCO.
yes.
They are now known as
I should
RCO.
say RCO legal, yes.
Is Northwest relying exclusively on LPS, or are there other platforms that Northwest uses?
Well, they're not our platforms, they're third-party platforms that the servicer tells us to use to communicate with them. But yes, there are other platforms.
And what are they?
Vendorscape is another platform. Lynx is another platform. Lendstar is another platform. Clarifier is another platform.
And is Northwest using those platforms alongside with LPS?
Yes.
And you also testified to a case management system that Northwest has, is that correct?
Yes.
What is that called?
We call it FTS, File Tracking System.
Is that a proprietary program?
Yes.
In the referral process, the data that you receive is transmitted or sent to you via this third-party platform, correct?
Yes.
And Northwest would use that information to generate the documents necessary to foreclose.
Some of it, yes.
All right. What documents does Northwest generate using the data fed through LPS?
Well, I wouldn't say that it's only the data that's fed through that platform, because a lot of it's manually entered based off of documents that we obtain.
So what are these documents that you obtain?
Well, so the basic information that we need to order the title and stuff, like the borrower's names, their social security numbers, the property and mailing addresses, some of the financial information like the unpaid principal balance. Much of that we don't import. We review directly from the lender's screen prints or the loan documentation, like the note and the deed of trust.
So let me understand your testimony here. You have the basic information by which you can manually input, but the information as to who you should foreclose in, the name of the entity, that comes from the referring source.
Yes.
And you learn who to foreclose based on the documents you testify, which is the loss mitt declaration?
It depends on the servicer. For this particular loan, they would tell us to launch what they call a action in the name of request in the system, and that way they'd be able to tell us who to foreclose in the name of.
All right.
Sometimes they'll put it in the referral documentation who to foreclose in the name of. It just depends on whether that information is available at the time of the referral, or how that particular servicer wants us to seek that information.
So let me go back to the documents that you've testified. The loss mitt declaration, which is a declaration pertaining to the efforts to contact the borrower for loss mitigation purposes, correct?
Correct.
And that is provided to you by the referring source.
Yes.
And the second document you testified to is the appointment of successor trustee.
Yes,
And that's simply because Northwest was not the original trustee.
correct.
Is that the majority of cases that Northwest handled?
I'd say the majority of them, we were not the original trustee in the deed of trust, yes.
And then you also testify in terms of an assignment of deed of trust
Yes,
and a beneficiary declaration.
yes.
Now, the data that you receive from the referring source in terms of who's named to foreclose, when you refer to Northwest checking for accuracy or consistency, simply is to see if the information appears in all of these documents.
Most of the documents. The lostment declaration may or may not identify the beneficiary. It may identify the servicer. Depends on whether we're dealing with our in-house form or the external servicer's form.
All right, so let's talk about that. What of the 4 documents that you just referred to, the lostment, the appointment, the assignment, and the beneficiary declaration, which ones of these 4 documents does Northwest generate or prepare on its own?
Well, it depends. If they provide it at referral, then it'll be provided by the servicer. If it's not provided at the referral, then we'll upload our form and ask them to execute it.
So that's
So I would refer to the exhibits. I can tell by looking at the exhibits whether they're in-house generated or externally
okay.
by the servicer.
You're familiar with the difference between, and I don't know if there are any differences, but you are familiar with loans that are relating to GSE, right?
Yes.
As such as Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Ginnie Mae.
Yes.
Do you know off the top of your head whether the documents, the 4 documents we're talking about now, whether those documents are provided to you by the referring source or generated in-house?
Object to the form.
I know it's compound.
I'm not
but-
sure where you're going because you said GSE and then you switched and said.
Sure. So
And then you went to in-house.
okay.
I'm not sure what they have to do with each other.
Let me break it down. Your testimony is that if the documents were provided upfront by the referring sources, you would rely on those.
Object to the form.
Usually the beneficiary declaration and the lostment declaration, those would be either internal or external. This appointment is almost always from us. The assignment is either internal or external, depending on if they ask us to draft it or not. So it isn't a one-size-fits-all answer.
Okay.
It depends on what's been provided and what process they have for us to request.
And
If it's not provided or already a record.
And that would be true across the board, regardless of whether it's a GSE loan or a regular loan.
Yes.
As to timing of your receipt of these documents, is there a sequence as to which document of these 4 that we're talking about that you received first, second, third, and fourth? If there's an order.
Are we talking about this file or are we talking about currently?
Well, we could talk about this file because you reviewed this file, right?
Yes.
So can you explain for us in terms of this file, the Lucero file?
So our procedure back in 2012 for this file, when this file was being processed, the sequence wasn't as important as when we recorded. So when I say that, I say the lostment declaration, which would be the first document that we would have looked for when issuing a notice of default. Because at the time, we were issuing our notice of default as an authorized agent and not as trustee. So at that time, in order to issue the notice of default, we would have had a prerequisite to get the lostment declaration first. Then we would have followed up for an assignment and an appointment and a beneficiary's declaration. back then, we weren't paying, back then it wasn't, the issue wasn't when was the assignment appointment executed, it was when were they received and in what order were they recorded. So we always made sure that if we were being appointed by the new beneficiary, that the assignment was recorded before the appointment. And then the beneficiary's declaration was a prerequisite to the issuance of the notice of sale. So if we didn't have the beneficiary's declaration, we wouldn't issue the notice of sale until it was received.
And when did you receive the beneficiary declaration in this case? Do you remember? And
I'd have to refer to the exhibit, but I believe it was, I'd prefer to refer to the exhibit
Sure,
if you have it.
sure.
I think it was in October, but I gotta look at it.
Mr. Stenman, you're looking at Exhibit 1. Can you tell us what Exhibit 1 is?
Beneficiary declaration?
Does that refresh your memory as to when this document was received in relation to the Lucero file?
Yeah, I believe it was sometime in October of 2012.
So the date of Exhibit 1, the 5th of October, is it safe to assume that that's the date that the document was signed?
Well, that's what it purports.
You would have no way of knowing.
Well, it has a date and it has a signature. I'm making an assumption that that's when it was executed.
And how did you receive Exhibit 1?
Electronically, I don't believe it require an original.
Correct. But did you receive it via the LPS system?
I believe so, yes.
Is it safe to assume that strike that. When you testified that there was no requirement for an original, does it mean that you've never seen the original of Exhibit 1?
I've never seen an original of Exhibit 1.
Is it common or is it at all routine for Northwest to see the original of the beneficiary declaration?
2012, it would have been more common to see an original than currently.
Why is that?
Because the statute doesn't require that it be an original. There's nothing in the statute that says that we have to be in possession of an original executed beneficiary's declaration.
But you said something about 2012.
2012, a lot of the servicers sent the original,
Really?
but we would just image it, so we didn't require an original.
Okay. Do you know for a fact that in this case, in the Lucero case, you actually had an original of Exhibit 1?
No, I believe that we received a copy.
An electronic copy?
Yes.
You're looking at Exhibit 2, Mr. Stenman, and can you tell me what Exhibit 2 is?
Beneficiary's declaration?
Also for the Lucero file?
Yes.
And what's the date of Exhibit 2?
October 16th, 2012?
Is there any reason why you would have two beneficiary declarations?
No.
Were you aware that there are two beneficiary declarations in this case before you prepare for deposition today?
Yes.
Okay, and how did you become aware?
They were in our image archive.
So in terms of utilizing these documents for purpose of foreclosing on the Lucero file, which one did you choose to use?
We didn't use any of the beneficiary's declarations.
Okay, so you received 1 and 2 and you relied on them simply?
I didn't need to rely on them. I never issued a notice of sale.
Okay. But in terms of the process of foreclosure on Lucero, Northwest started out a foreclosure process, is that correct?
We issued a notice of default as an authorized agent.
And that's where it ended? You never progressed past the point of notice of default? Is that
Correct.
Is it common for Northwest to receive more than one beneficiary declaration?
No,
Can you account for why there are two in this case?
no.
Before I go to the next question, is it significant for you as the trustee to confirm whether there's the digital image or the digital copy that you receive is a true and correct copy of the original document? Does that play into your consideration as trustee level?
Object to the form.
I'm not sure why I would question whether it's a true and correct original.
That,
I don't know why I would doubt that it wasn't.
okay, so based on that, you're comfortable or confident that the documents that were sent to you by the referring source are accurate and truthful? Is that a fair statement?
I would say I would not have any question on relying on them. I would rely on them.
You're being shown Exhibit 3, and I will represent to you that Exhibit 3 is not relating to the Lucero case and that we've redacted some of the information. But can you take a look and identify for me whether you can identify that Exhibit 3 is a document that came from Northwest Trustee System?
Yes.
Okay, and how can you tell?
Our file numbers in the footer.
Okay. And what is Exhibit 3?
A beneficiary declaration,
What is the date of Exhibit 3?
November 9th of 2013.
Now, in looking at Exhibit 3, are you able to say whether that document came via electronic image, just like you testified?
No, because I didn't review this file for this deposition.
But it does look like one of those documents that came from Northwest System.
This does look like an internal document. It would have been produced off of our system.
Okay, so this is a
The template would have come from our system.
And so when you say internal, who input the Northwest trustee case number on there, or file number, I should say?
It's merged from our system.
Okay. So that's the designation to you that this is an internal document.
Well, when a beneficiary executes it and returns it to us, we need to be able to identify it to a file if the rest of the information can't be identified.
All right.
So it's a reference point so that we can look it up when it's received.
Let's go through the logical sequence. Is Exhibit 3 typical of a document that Northwest generates and then sends to the referring source?
Yes.
And then you would get the signed copy back via electronic means?
Yes.
Mr. Stenman, you're looking at Exhibit 4, which I will represent to you that it came from the same file that we redacted the name of the borrower in this case. Can you identify for me whether Exhibit 4 refers to the same foreclosure file of Northwest Trustee?
It does.
And what is the date of Exhibit 4?
The date is June 7th, 2013.
So do you agree that Exhibit 3 and Exhibit 4, they come from the same file, they were generated by Northwest as well,
Yes,
and they have different dates and different signers? Is that correct?
yes.
Can you account for why you would have two, or why Northwest would have two beneficiary declarations that are varying
You mean varying in what way?
in dates and the signer?
No, I'd have to look at the file to see why another one was executed.
Can
Why we provided it and it was executed.
All right. Can you think of reasons why that would happen?
Object to the front.
Well, I would look for a difference in this document. The difference is one says actual holder, the other one says the holder. That looks like the only difference in this document.
Okay. And what is your understanding of that difference?
Object to the front.
As they are, as if that difference important to Northwest for purpose of foreclosing on the property?
I don't know. Are you asking me to make a conclusion of law regarding the meaning of actual holder versus holder?
I'm simply asking you if it matters at all for Northwest as the foreclosing trustee.
Well, I can tell you that my template now says actual holder. Back then it said holder. And that was, the change was on the advice of counsel.
Now, in terms of 3 and 4, though, would you agree that they were both dated for 13?
2013?
Yes, 2013.
The year, yes.
Sorry. So the change that you just testified to, when did that get implemented?
I don't have an exact date. I don't know.
Was it in 2013 or 2014?
Well, it appears that if they're both in-house forms and they were both generated by us, that it was between those dates.
Between the dates that are appearing on 3 and 4?
Yes.
All right, well, that's a good point. So 4 is dated for June of 2013, and 3 is dated for November of 2013. And your testimony then is that during that time...
Excuse me, can you restate that?
Sure. When you're looking at Exhibit 4, do you agree with me that it is dated for June 7, 2013?
Yes.
And then when you look at Exhibit 3, do you agree that it is dated for November 9 of 2013?
Yes.
So is it your testimony that during this period of time, there was a change in terms of your internal document, the beneficiary declaration to be specific, that goes from holder to actual holder?
Object to the front.
Yes.
Okay. And that was, according to your testimony, on the advice of counsel?
Yes.
And can you tell me, not the contents of what your lawyer told you or what you told your lawyer, but is there a case, an event, a change in legislation that caused that change that you know of?
No. Not as far as I know.
Do you know the rationale behind the change? As in why?
Object to the front.
Do I remember? It's vague, but I believe it was in response to frivolous lawsuits.
You remember what these lawsuits were, like names and...
No.
Okay. And when you said frivolous, can you explain that?
Yes. With this particular issue, the trustee's company's position was there is no difference in the meaning, but it seems to make a difference to outside parties who sue us. So we changed it so that was one thing that they would not sue us over.
Okay, and that's your definition by frivolous?
Yes.
As in, we don't believe that we're wrong, but because you sue us, we're going to change it.
Object to the front.
I'm paid.
No.
If you can answer.
No, I believe that if there's no decision, well, no, let me back up. I think we just wanted to be as transparent to the statute as we could, so that there was no misunderstanding about what our documents meant, and that it did not lead to a lawsuit that was unnecessary.
Okay. All right. I'm going to ask you to go back to Exhibit 1 and 2. And 1 and 2, Mr. Stenman, again, are beneficiary declarations pertaining to the Lucero file. Okay, and I'm just going to do a follow-up question here. Because these documents were generated or prepared in 2012, is that why the language of holder is there instead of actual holder?
Yes.
So that goes along with your explanation as to why the change was implemented. Because this predated
Yes.
2013. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Bear with me. This is 5. I would like for you to take a look at Exhibit 5 and take some time, Mr. Stenman, so we can refresh your memory.
Okay.
I take it that you have seen Exhibit 5 before coming in today.
Yes.
Okay. And just to be sure, you reviewed the file which contained Exhibit 5 via electronic means.
Yes.
Okay. And what is Exhibit 5, Mr. Stenman?
Notice of default?
Okay. Pertaining to the Lucero file, correct?
Yes.
Okay. The pages are not numbered, but I would like for you to go to the 3rd page.
Okay.
And I would like for you to look at paragraph D, which is under the heading itemized account of the arrears. Do you see that?
Yes.
Where would you say Northwest received the information about delinquent monthly payments beginning with the June 1st, 2011 installment?
They were, when you say where?
Where did that information
Come from? Screen prints from the referral.
That's the LPS system.
The screen prints are probably from the servicer's servicing system.
Which is different than LPS?
Yes.
Okay, so how did you receive that data?
Through LPS, as an image.
Okay. And when would you say you received that information?
I'd have to look at the image of the screen prints, but after the referral and before we issued the notice.
Okay. When you receive the information, you simply copy it into the notice of default, correct?
There's a financial tab in our case management system. We input it into the case management system and then it merges into the notice of default.
Right, but the figure comes from another source.
The figures come from another source, yes.
Not Northwest.
The information on here regarding monthly payments and late charges and lenders' fees and costs are from another source.
Okay, and that would be the referring source,
Yes.
and no one else.
Well, when you say referring source, who are you referring to?
Is there anyone besides the referring source that works with you throughout the foreclosure process?
So when you say referring source, it makes me think of LPS desktop.
Oh, don't think of it that way, because
Okay.
LPS is just an
Just a
animate-
transmission.
Yes.
Way to transmit.
Right, so I'm talking about the entity that initiated or that sent you
Oh,
the
okay.
referral.
So Senlar would have sent us the information.
Correct. Right?
Yes.
So you received this information from Stenman
Yes.
and no one else
No.
that you can think of?
No, not that I can think
All
of.
right. And I'm going to the next item because you already explained that the other 3 items are provided to you by Senlar. I'm going to the trustee fees. Do you see that?
Yes.
And it has a figure of $542.50. How is that number determined?
It's a prorated amount of what we could charge overall.
What is the basis of the proration?
Well, we wouldn't want to charge the full allowable fee to the borrower at the first step in the process. We would want to charge a prorated amount based on the amount of work that we've done so far.
So do you, in looking at Exhibit 5, do you know the full rate or fee for your trustee services?
I didn't review the fee schedule from 2012, but it would have been based off of whatever the published Freddie Mac rate was at the time.
And why would it be Freddie Mac rate and not Senlar's rate?
Because it's in the investor's Freddie Mac, and Stenlar would have instructed us to bill at Freddie Mac rates.
And so in referring to that instruction, it would be sent by Senlar within the referral?
Yes, they may not say Freddie Mac rates, they may say GSE rates, because their referral letter may be a general letter that says whatever the GSE or Ginnie Mae rates are, those are the rates to charge. Unless it's something that they own themselves, then we would follow their own rate schedule.
All right. And I haven't asked for production of your foreclosure file, but is it safe for me to assume that when I get it, it would contain the documents that you're referring to? For example,
I'd have to look at the referral to see if it actually states that. Sometimes it might just say, it might not say anything about what to bill. It would just say in it that Freddie Mac's the investor, and we would just know that we are to charge the Freddie Mac rate schedule.
And how would you know?
Because it would state that the investor's Freddie Mac.
Yeah, but how would you know what the Freddie Mac rates are or what Stenlar rates are?
Freddie Mac publishes their rates?
Publicly,
Yes,
and you have access to that.
yes.
And if Stenlar does have their own rates, you would have access to that too because they provide them to you?
Yeah, that would probably, yes.
Okay. Your testimony earlier is that at the point of issuing the default, the notice of default, you were acting as a duly authorized agent for Stenlar in this case.
Yes.
And so can you explain why at this stage, which is the day of the notice of default, August 27, 2012, my client will be assessed a trustee's fees?
It's a label in the form. We don't differentiate between some third-party contractor fee and a trustee's fee. So I guess I would say that that's a form label.
Okay. The form is designed or was designed by Northwest, is that correct?
Yes.
So it's a product of someone in your company sitting down deciding what the form looks like. Is it safe for me to assume that?
Yes.
Okay. When you talked about a flat rate fee that you get paid for services as trustee, and then your testimony is that this fee would be prorated according to how much work you've done. Is that
Yes.
fair to say? So at the stage where my client receives the notice of default, this is as much work as you've done is issuing the notice of default.
Well, there's a lot of steps that take place before you issue the notice of default in order for you to be able to issue the notice of default.
Sure. And that the proration really reflects all that work.
Yes.
Can you look here on the second page, if anywhere, well, look at the entire document if you wish, anywhere that would alert my client to know that you were doing work at this point in time, not as a trustee, but as a duly authorized agent for Stenman.
Yeah, it'd be on the fourth page
Mhm.
in the signature line.
Okay.
By Northwest Trustee Services, Inc., its duly authorized agent.
Okay. So in reading Exhibit 5, my client would understand that there's a trustee fees being assessed for purpose of the cure amount. Is that correct?
Object to the form.
Well, I don't know what your client would assume.
What is the purpose of the notice of default when you send it out, Northwest send it out to borrowers?
It's a prerequisite to the notice of sale.
As in, you have to do it by law.
Yes.
Does it matter what the recipient understand your document?
Object to the form.
If you don't understand the question, I can rephrase. Let me rephrase. Was there any consideration going into the design drafting of the notice of default for the borrower to understand what it is that you are doing?
Well, it's based on statute, and I would think that the statute would be written in a way that would make it understandable for the borrower. There's a lot of language in here, but there's also contact information. So if the borrower had a question about the form of notice or any of the contents of the notice, all they have to do is pick up the phone and ask.
So by that testimony, the burden is on the borrower to clarify, if you will, what you're saying in the notice of default.
Object to the form.
Well, like any piece of mail that I might receive, it would be up to me if I had a question to contact who sent it to me, if I had a question about its content.
But you don't believe that that is part of your duty as a trustee foreclosing on my client's home to make it clear to my client?
Object to the form.
I think the form's clear.
Okay, I'll accept that.
Can we go off the record, please? I need to move my car.
Take 5 minutes.
And this guy likes to stop every hour anyway, so it's an hour or 2 minutes, so that's perfect.
Okay.